Hi, my name is Cecilia Poullain, and welcome to this episode of Brave New Women. All around the world, there are amazing, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Brave New Women is about giving those women a platform and a voice, and it's about changing the way that women are perceived. And it's a way of inspiring all of us to do the things that we've always wanted to do. So it's my great pleasure today to be able to welcome Erin Hicks. Erin is a training coordinator at Colorado State University, and she's working for their Center for Protected Area Management. This isn't Erin's first career. She previously worked as an illustrator. So I just like to say welcome to the podcast, Erin.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I'm so glad to be here.
So my first question for you is, if maybe you could just give us a bit of your journey to how did you get to the job that you're currently doing? Because I understand that it wasn't a completely straight path. So what were your motivations for doing what you're doing now? What have you done before? Maybe just give us a bit of a background on who you are and what you've done previously.
Definitely. Sometimes I wish it was a straight path, but the curvy paths make life, it's a good, interesting adventure as well. So I first started off in the art field, and I was kind of just trying my best as a teenager to follow the advice of do what you love instead of, just focusing on making money and just, trying to figure out my path as best as possible. But when I got into the commercial art field as an illustrator, I realized by commercializing a deep inner creative process proved to not be the best idea for me. I felt like it really drained my creative energy to do the art that I really wanted to create. Mm-hmm. And kind of sucked the soul out of the creative process for me. And I know that's not true for all artists, but that converting my passion into a commercial career turned out not to be the best option for me. And what happened was when I decided that I kind of wanted to move on, I took some vacation days, knowing that I was going to quit my job shortly, and volunteered for a trail crew up in Maine in the northeast of the U.S.
What's a trail crew for those of us?
A trail, yeah. So essentially in national parks and national forests throughout the world, if there is visitation and you're going and hiking on trails, there are actually groups of people that are hired usually by the Protected Area Agency that maintain and build those trails. Oftentimes, at least before I got into that work, I didn't realize that those trails were physically built and maintained by people. I don't know what everyone thinks, but I kind of imagine the deer going, along the trail and kind of grazing and keeping things clean and neat. And there are groups of young, dedicated, hard-working folks that hike hundreds of miles and carry heavy packs and work with tools and primitive conditions and actually maintain those trails. And that was my first introduction into a natural resource just a career path. I had never known anyone that had worked in natural resources, and just didn't have any base of reference to know that those careers existed. Mm-hmm. And so I was extremely inspired and energized by the experience. It was just a week. It was a volunteer trail crew through the Appalachian Mountain Club. They organized these volunteer vacations. And then came back. I was living in New York City to all my city friends and totally pumped. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm looking for opportunities working in the national parks. And they quickly called me, "Oh, you tree hugger. Like, that's crazy." And I was like, "Yep, this is what I'm going to do. I'm getting out of this city." And so that kind of gave me an inspiration, just a little bit of a hint that this was the direction I wanted to go into. And I joined the California Conservation Corps and greatly believe in the Conservation Corps experience. At least in the U.S., there are many different Conservation Corps kind of built off of the Civilian Conservation Corps from the 30s. The idea of bringing young people together to help achieve public works, help maintain our parks and natural resources, while gaining job skills and leadership skills. And sometimes even some people that go through conservation course don't have like their GED or their high school diploma. So that they also provide those services. And so I did that, and realized that conservation was where I wanted to be. And I think that's really driven by just a passion for the environment. I've always been very passionate about the environment, even though I didn't have any role models in my life to kind of show me an applied career path for it. And then when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic, an environmental volunteer working in a small rural community in the southern part of the country, I really realized the importance of working with people to achieve conservation goals, that it wasn't really a matter or biologists and ecologists and hard scientists are important, but it really takes getting people on board and supporting conservation efforts to ensure that success. So I came back.
Do you have any examples from when you were in the Dominican Republic of things that made you think that you really needed to be working with people?
Yeah, for example, the community I was living in didn't have any trash collection service. So people either threw their trash in the river, or if they were really good, they would burn their trash at their house, or they created an improvised dumps. And that was a big issue. We actually had cholera in the community. The river had cholera, and 6 people the summer I moved there died of cholera in my community. And that, people were throwing used diapers into the river. And so working with the community, this took some time, but we identified, trash or solid waste as an issue that they wanted to work on. And long story short, we got some trash cans donated, and you could give all the tools, like, here are the trash cans, here are places to put. The municipality agreed to send a truck one day a week, or one day every other week to come and pick up the trash. But we had some type of service, and that wasn't enough for behavior change. That, and I think behavior change is more complicated, and providing the tools or to do the right thing doesn't mean that people are going to follow through. So that took a lot of community work, meetings, and working with the youth to do more environmental education, which isn't always environmental education is great, but it doesn't always produce those behavioral changes. But that really cued me in that there's something more going on, and it's not just about bringing. And I wasn't an expert. I don't have I have a master's of science, but more in social science. But then I just had a bachelor's of fine arts in illustration, and so here's this college graduate with an art degree, saying you should throw your trash in the trash can. I wasn't necessarily, the expert, but it really took working with the community. And so when I came back to the US, I looked for a master's program that focused more on conservation and development projects on the international scale, and with the social focus, really focused on understanding human behavior and bringing people into the conservation sphere to participate in solutions.
Because I suppose that if the problem is human, then the solution needs to be human.
Exactly.
You can't do without.
That's kind of what I realized through my Peace Corps experience. And then that was further grounded and verified through my graduate experience. And so that interest in conservation, and also just really a deep-rooted sense of wanting to give back to the greater good. Like, I deeply believe that we're part of a global community, and that um, we aren't just here by the efforts that by our own efforts. There's the environmental services, there's the human services, there's people and countries and communities working together or not, but ideally working together that have provided the quality of life that I've been able to enjoy. And I know there are people that live on in this planet that have much less, and many more people than we would like to think, that don't have access to clean water, that don't have a cement floor, in the least, have dirt floors, that don't have a sufficient place to go to the bathroom, that don't have a clean way to cook food. And I think that's a large reality that, maybe if people haven't traveled, they're not necessarily aware of. And just working in conservation, but more focus on the people aspect of it, is kind of where I've identified that I can make the greatest difference.
Mm-hmm. So what's your current job at the Colorado?
Yeah, so working for the Center for Protected Area Management, I've fulfilled the role as training coordinator, but also just got transitioned into project manager role. And we are a very small team of 3 people. And so anyone that's familiar working with small nonprofits, you kind of got to be a jack of all trades and be able to adapt and move and take on different roles. I contribute anything and everything to organizing our trainings. We have 3 flagship courses that we offer in the US. They're currently postponed to next year due to COVID. But we invite people from Latin America and throughout the world to come to Colorado, and we take them on tours of the US protected area systems.
Does that mean the national parks when you say protected areas?
Yeah, national parks and national forests within the Western U.S. And I help organize those courses, do logistics communication. I design curriculum. I teach. I set up apartments, wash sleeping bags, like do everything. There's nothing above or below any of us, even the co-directors of the center, like no one is above or below any job. So I really like the diversity that our work provides. And essentially we're... Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what do you actually, what's the purpose of the training? What are you actually trying to, messages that you're trying to get across?
Yeah. So essentially, we work with people that work in the national parks and national forests of the world. A lot of countries in Latin America call them protected areas. In the US, they're more commonly called public lands. But they're really a key tool for biodiversity protection. And our center was created 30 years ago, having identified the need to increase the capacity of those professionals working in the national parks and national forests of Latin America and the world, in order to improve Spanish words are coming to me right now. That sometimes happens. The efficacy of biodiversity conservation and just improve benefit to local communities that live in and around those protected areas. And the UN has even come up with an updated goal for 2030 that the goal is to protect 30% of the Earth's surface across land and sea by 2030. And right now we're at 15% land and 10% oceans that are actually set aside to protect the biodiversity. And so that means a lot more parks need to be created and a lot more personnel need to be trained. And so we really focus on training, giving people that work in parks, whether they're superintendents at the top or they're park rangers or technicians, more, in the field, the skills that they need to be successful in their jobs. And those are not just focused on the hard skills, technical knowledge and tools. We really also focus on, for lack of a better term, the soft skills, leadership and confidence.
Can you just give me some examples of some of the hard skills that you're teaching?
Yeah, we focus a lot on public use, zoning, finance in protected areas, building partnerships. We don't do any of the like law enforcement type training or, how to handle firearms or anything like that. But patrolling, pretty much every aspect related to how do you manage a park and community relationships, et cetera. We have a long list.
And tell me a bit more.
I hope that gives an idea.
Yeah, sure. And some of the soft skills too.
Yeah. So for the past 10 years or so, we've been focused on teaching leadership skills, especially within our oldest flagship course, which is an international protected area management course that runs 32 days here in the US. And so we have 4 specific sessions and a leadership action plan workbook. And this idea is to really create sustainability in our trainings, because we don't want people just to walk away and say, aha, I have a certificate. I did the course in Colorado, as it's often called in Latin America. Like, that was awesome and it was fun and great memories. We want them to be able to go back to their institutions and apply what they learned and affect change, which can be often difficult in institutions where, people are well set in their ways, and you have someone coming back from a trip to the US saying, aha, I learned all these amazing things. We need to change everything. And they're like, wait a second, like, we don't understand, so trying to give them some of the tools to be able to withstand the barriers or understand that there will be barriers in in implementing new ideas, but giving them the awareness of hopefully how to go about long-term lasting change. And ultimately, because we work with people that come from Latin America, and there are definitely parks in Latin America that have that are well run, that have decent personnel and resources. And when I say that, I have to be clear that there's no park in the world that feels like they have enough resources. So, but have more resources than some, and that are able to do their job fairly effectively. But a lot of people that we receive are one of 2 or 3 staff running a national park that's greater than the size of I can only think of U.S. parks, but like Yellowstone. With 3 people, lots of illegal activity, very dangerous, oftentimes encountering armed people that are doing illegal resource extraction, that have one, a pickup truck and a couple radios that they're lucky that they work and in between them, and that feel that the odds are kind of stacked against them, and sometimes feel forgotten, that or disconnected, and just have lost hope that that they know the work they're doing is good, and they sacrifice so much of their lives, leaving their families for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, putting their, risking their lives to help make sure that the biodiversity within this park, is protected, but don't have that support based on the situation, the context that they're in, and so we really focus on. Our ultimate goal is providing hope through the basis of technical knowledge and skills and these soft skills, and creating a supporting network. And something that's really touched me through my trainings is or through participating and working with the trainings that we offer, is that when you bring different people together from different countries, they start to learn, like, oh, you're in a similar situation. I had no idea. I haven't met anyone outside of my region, or I haven't met anyone outside of my country. And it's always felt like we're, kind of been in a hard spot, but it's good to know that there are other people that are struggling. And now I have someone to communicate with, to support, to provide and receive support in the future. So we try to really promote these professional networks, or these communities of practice that continue on afterwards, well after our trainings.
And do you get feedback from those networks? Do you hear how they're going? I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years after the training? Do you?
Yeah, we're working. So we create WhatsApp groups, and we have Facebook pages and Facebook groups in which these alumni can communicate. We're always looking for other or better ways to do it, and reaching out to our network of professionals that are in capacity building to kind of see how other people are doing it as well. We do like a 6-month check-in with our alumni after the course has ended, and we check in on how they're progressing with their applying their goals that they identified in their leadership action plan. But we definitely realize that there's room for improvement. And ideally, if we could do a continual check-in, 6 months, a year, 2 years out, 5 years out, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. How many people have been through your programs? Do you know?
We've trained thousands of people.
Wow.
For our 30, our course, it would have been its 30th year anniversary this year. So the International Protected Area Management course that's run 29 years. We've had over 650 participants. I could look at our website. I'm trying to remember how many countries.
So it sounds like mostly people from Latin America.
For that course, it's offered in Spanish. So mostly people are from Latin America. We've received people from Spain or from Equatorial Guinea, which is a Spanish-speaking country in Africa. Or often people from the Portuguese-speaking countries.
From Africa, do you get people?
Yeah, Equatorial Guinea.
Yeah,
is the one country. Yeah, and sorry, I'm not good with the Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa, but I believe in our long history, we have had not only people from Brazil but other Portuguese-speaking countries.
Mm-hmm.
And our second flagship course is our tourism in protected areas course that's offered in English. And so then we get people from all around the world, not only Latin America, but anyone that has decent English skills. And so it's really interesting. I've worked on that seminar 3 years, and each time there's someone that's come from a country that I've never heard of, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. I didn't even know this place existed, or I wasn't, they wasn't really on my radar. So it's really inspiring and super interesting to meet people from all around the world and learn about their context, what they're doing, well in their countries, and then also their struggles and how so many are going through similar struggles and can really come together to support each other.
And do you have anything that's particular for women, or do you hear about women who work in conservation? Have they got in particular issues?
Yeah, and so we've had women participate in our Spanish language course throughout the years. Honestly, we've worked in the past 10 years, as far as I'm aware. I've worked with the center since 2014, so I don't have all of the institutional memory, but we've been very conscientious of trying to reach equal numbers of men and women in our courses, and we were able to do that for the first time last year, I believe, or 2 years ago. And so we're really working to understand those factors. Number one, natural resources and protected area management is a primarily male-dominated field. But what are the barriers for women to get into this career, to be selected for trainings by their institutions, to be supported for trainings? And so our first course in 1990 had 1 woman and I think like 18 or 19 males. And then that was the kind of the pattern for many years. And that wasn't quite on our center's radar at that time. But now we're really focused on promoting gender equity and equality within the conservation career. And we launched our first women's leadership and conservation seminar last year. We had 17 women from 9 different Latin American countries come. We offered it in Spanish, and we plan to offer it alternating in Spanish and English every other year. Our in-person seminar, unfortunately, is postponed due to COVID, but we're working on creating an online version in English so that those that can't necessarily sacrifice 2 weeks of their time to come to the US, that maybe we can't find a scholarship to cover all of the tuition, have access to the training in some form.
Wow.
And so we're working on designing that right now. But essentially, and I feel really, proud to be a part, I think, of the solution. And also, we are a male-led organization, so our co-directors are pretty forward-thinking, and are trying to also provide solutions to the problem. And so, just through conversations with our past women participants, before I came on, or during a period when I wasn't working with the center as much and I was finishing my master's, they ran a survey with all of our past women participants to understand how we could serve them better and what could help them advance in their careers. And they asked for a women-specific training. And so that's what we did. And now we're running another survey and following up with that same group. And understanding more of the barriers and supports for them advancing in their careers. Do they, what has prevented them from accessing trainings like ours, and really helping inform those that are providing similar trainings. For example, our partners are the U.S. Forest Service International Programs, and so our courses are part of a greater offering that they have. We're also under their banner. So they're trying to implement better gender practices in their trainings, and they affect natural resource professionals throughout the world, and topics related to climate change and urban forestry. And they have a whole slew of topics that they go out and train people on. So we're helping kind of lead that process of implementing better practices in conservation trainings in general to bridge that gap.
What are the particular challenges that say the women that came on the first women only course?
Yeah.
What are the particular challenges that they face in their jobs?
Yes. Yeah. And we had women that were like community wildland firefighters in Mexico, to executive directors of nonprofits, or the directors of regional offices of like WCS, the World Wildlife Conservation Society, or I believe we also had like WWF. And we even had a college student that participated. So we really had a range of early to mid-career professionals. And there was a lot of deep and moving conversations. I think just being able to, share stories and find out that other people are going through similar things is very.
Can you remember some of the stories?
Yeah, eye-opening. Anything from, because Latin America has a history of sexism. Every country has their level of sexism, but Latin America tends to be and this is just generally speaking. I know every country is different, but has a history of strong
way up there in terms of
Yes. And so these women, already are in a male-dominated field, and shared stories about just, seeing, here's an opportunity, like, for example, as a park ranger, to go on patrol and drive the truck and lead a patrol, and being told, okay, you go, to the quarters where everyone's staying in the kitchen, prepare meals. You're not qualified to drive the truck. Like, we're never giving you the keys to the truck. And like really, working to gain respect from male colleagues, working in leadership positions within parks, and just seeming to have to put a lot more effort in to build that credibility, to not be questioned, to not be doubted. And there was a lot of conversations about, and this isn't the case for everyone, but having women supervisors that have made their way, but not being supportive to other women that were making their way. So feeling that, hoping that they would have an ally and someone that had kind of pushed through those barriers, and then finding out that they were trying to kind of put them through the same, the same kind of rite of passage that they had to go through, and not always finding that support from other women that you would hope to be allies. And that's not every woman supervisor, but that was a story that came up, kind of just like that shock of like, how can this be? Like, we should be all supporting each other. Women that saw male colleagues get promoted quicker, that had less experience, less time, and that even in one case where a woman lost her position, and she felt because it was discrimination, gender discrimination. I can't share the details of that, but she felt that it was clearly gender discrimination and was trying to legally fight that. There's so many stories, and another inspiration for why we've done this seminar is that within our department, the Human Dimensions of Natural Resources department within Warner College of Natural Resources within Colorado State University, we have a couple researchers that have been looking at women's support or barriers and support for women conservation leaders in the U.S. And I remember when they first, this is Dr. Jen Solomon and Dr. Megan Jones. They have 2 articles out. If you look up their names, you would find them. When they first presented some of their research findings to a group of faculty and students at the university, it created such a conversation. Male colleagues that were like, I had no idea that women go through this. And women saying, oh my gosh, this is the first time that I've been able to talk about this comfortably, that it's being brought up into the open, and that it's being exposed, because we go through these things, and it's so systemic, and it's just a part of our experience. And, we just have to figure out a way to push through. But now, based on the research and barriers that they found, which included also women supervisors not being supportive to other women rising up as one of them amongst many, the voices of men being given, the floor versus the voices of women. There were many different barriers, and then that were identified. And I think at least 60 women conservation leaders in high positions, like directors, executive directors, presidents, CEOs, were interviewed for this research. And so that really, helped us to have that conversation, and we worked closely with them to design our seminar, to really create that space to continue to talk about these issues. Because if we don't talk about them, if they're not in the open, then we're never gonna find solutions to them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's part of what this podcast is about too, is to partially to show what amazing things women are doing, like what you're doing. I think is extraordinary. And also to have women to be talking about their experience in work. And what I hear across the interviews that I do is that it doesn't matter what jurisdiction they're in, it doesn't matter what the country they're in, it doesn't matter what industry they're in. This is an issue. It's a global issue of how women are treated in the workplace. And I'd be really interested in hearing about your experience as a woman in the workplace. What if there's issues that you've had, if you feel there's been any sort of discrimination, if it's been harder for you.
And so, like I mentioned, when I heard the presentation from our colleagues who had done research on barriers for women in conservation, that really hit an emotional core, because I feel like whether in the art field or the conservation field, I've encountered many barriers that I've perceived or suspected to be more gender related, and those are things that I haven't previously talked about much. Um,
Are there any examples that you can give about?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, anywhere from the very beginning of like working on an art team in New York, having primarily a male team, just me. It was just myself and another female colleague, and then, 6 or 7 other men, and um, definitely different levels of treatment regarding professionalism, like having very, professional one-on-one interactions with their male supervisor, at least the males having those very professional interactions. And then my female colleague and I often having times where it was, just having these kind of negative and degrading interactions, like, why did you mess this up? You're always making mistakes. Like, I don't even know why I hired you.
Wow.
Like, kind of like really abusive interactions, and sharing. We confided in our male colleagues. They were good guys. Like, are your interactions with our art director the same? Like, do you guys get this, similar treatment? They're like, oh no, like, it's always very supportive. If there's an error, it's very constructive. And so just, starting to observe, like, this is different. And, having a male intern come in with very little experience, and like him getting promoted much quicker than, I had been working 2 or 3 years and had more experience and was doing more things, and being told that I still didn't warrant a raise, being promoted without being told I was being promoted, and not being offered the raise to match that promotion. And that's just the art field. When I moved into natural resource work, in
the art field, can you share the story that you told me about what the art director said to you when you were raised?
Yeah. When I eventually asked for a raise after 2.5 years of being at the organization, and having contributed more, taken on more responsibilities, I think I warranted the raise, and comparing, what I was doing to others and how my male colleagues were being paid for the same title. I asked for a raise, and I was told that if I needed more money, I should go ask my parents for more money. And that was in a professional setting as a 26-year-old.
That is just extraordinary.
So, yeah. So I did not. That was the breaking point. It was definitely time to move on. This was not a good place to be working at. And then moving into the natural resource world. So especially like my introduction into working in natural resources was working on trail crews, literally sometimes moving rocks the size of VW buses or VW bugs, like things that I thought were impossible, that physically I never thought I would be able to do in my life. And so it was very common, like being on crews, maybe 3 women and 14, 15 men, being told, oh, you can't do that. Here, move over. Let me, move that rock for you. Like, this will just be quicker. The women are taking too long. And really just having to be strong and show that, it's not just that, women could do it too, but with any work, you got to work smarter, not harder. And so moving rocks the size of cars, it's not about the strength. It's about working together and being smart and using levers and fulcrums and little by little making it move to where you need to move. And these were mostly young men and women on crews. So I was in my mid to late 20s and worked until I was 30 on trail crews. And so, people are learning their way. But there was just a lot of kind of like, you guys can't do this job type thing. And constantly having to prove myself. Let's see. I mean, also encountered, like, I've had toxic women supervisors that, like, just seemed to make it more difficult than it ever had to be. And that instead of, providing support and mentorship, were more closed and would really deny opportunities from my perspective, and that was a real challenge because one case in specific with the trail crew I worked on, I had a woman supervisor, and it was the first time I had done trail work. So it was super inspiring to, like, I was learning, watching, like, oh, we can do this. Like I had no idea. So seeing her being able to, physically do things and lead a project and work just as hard as male colleagues was one thing, but then finding out that, like, she wasn't there to support the other women on the crew was another thing.
Okay.
And
can you give any examples of that? Any specific examples where you saw that? Did it come to mind?
I think, like, it's kind of promoting the stereotype that men can do more. So putting men on the really tough projects, putting women to the lighter things, not giving us the opportunity to really be doing the same technical level. Like, so she was kind of doing this and promoting the same stereotype, which I think maybe strengthened what the other colleagues on my crew, the other male colleagues on the crew felt was like, yeah, women should be doing this, or they can't do as much as we can. So really reinforcing that, not necessarily like providing that kind of like career feedback and guidance, and like just as far as like, how do I maneuver this as a female in this situation? More like, well, you just got to figure it out. Like, this isn't rocket science. Like, you just got to be as tough as the guys. And this could be, I'm sure there's the other story, her experience and maybe what she was exposed to and how she, figured out how to survive in this world. So, but this particular supervisor wasn't good at, or she wasn't eloquent with this topic, and where I hoped I would find some support in a woman leader, I didn't quite find that. And I think, like, in society and conservation, we need everybody to participate, especially in conservation. Like, it's an existential question here to protect our natural resources, to save the planet. There's not one person that we don't want as an ally. So, excluding any one group or really deterring any one group from conservation, and for participating exactly, is a grave error. And so, as anybody in a leadership position, anybody in any position should be working to help others engage and participate and feel welcomed. And it doesn't matter if you're a scientist or if you're an artist or if you're, working in medicine or whatever it may be. Like, we all have a role to play. So and especially ensuring that women are able to participate, which it's shown that conservation outcomes are more sustainable when women participate as well as men. When women engage in the economy, the GDP is usually higher. There's so many benefits to having women play equal roles in society, and so I really encourage all of us to just be very conscientious of how we support others, especially other women, whether they're in conservation or other areas of professional areas or in our personal lives as well.
I was going to ask you a final question, which is, what is your message? But I think maybe you've just given it.
Yeah.
It sounds like
that's it. Yeah. And I really, like, I think in my experience, like, one of the struggles I've had is finding good mentorship. And that could come from any gender. It doesn't necessarily have to be a good woman mentor. And I think that's also my lack of exposure to the field, and slowly, but, kind of going on that windy path and finding my way, and, taking this experience and saying, oh, I kind of like this. I want to try this direction. And then, correcting course and ending up where I'm at currently. But I think we can all play the role of a mentor and help others find their way. I think that's super important, especially for women coming up in their career.
Mm. I just wanted to say, I think that the work that you're doing as a woman in conservation, the work that you're doing at the Colorado State University, I think it's, I can only imagine what it must be like being a ranger in one of these, in a Latin American country, when you've got people who have got firearms and who are having to deal with huge territories and huge biodiversity. And I can only imagine what that must be like on a daily basis. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to you and to all the people that you're working with for doing such important work. I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, and I definitely think those are stories that need to be shared. Like, there's so many untold stories that the world would really benefit from listening to and understanding more about. And I also, want to recognize that the work I'm a part of is a huge team effort. We're a small but mighty team, and we have a senior advisor that also has been supporting us on our women work, who's Rosa Maria Vidal, who started an NGO in southern Mexico called Pro Natura Sur. And she's has decades of conservation work within Latin America, and has been one of our main supports and kind of content experts for this endeavor. So it's really a team effort, and I'm just really honored to be able to contribute to reaching out to other women and helping share their stories as well.
Well, it looks like we've talked in the past about seeing if we can actually get some of the rangers on the podcast and to get them to share their stories. And I think that would be amazing. So,
yeah, I look forward to making that a reality or helping make that a reality.
Well, thank you very much, Erin, and look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for creating this podcast. I think this is a great opportunity to learn from diverse female voices, so I really appreciate your efforts.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brave New Women. On Friday, 22 January, I'll be holding a free webinar to talk about how women can stand up and speak up. There'll be 2 sessions, 8:30 a.m. in Paris, which is 6:30 p.m. in Sydney, and then the second session at 2:30 p.m. Paris, which is 8:30 a.m. on the US East Coast. If you'd like to join us, please connect on LinkedIn or on the Brave New Women Facebook page. Thanks so much for listening.